Martin, you can take a seat directly here. We're going to have a wrap up. So if John comes up and Michael comes up, we'll see if we have any questions from the audience on this little communication session. I can suspect there are some things that you didn't understand. At least I didn't understand a lot of things. Wherever Higgins is going, we wonder why. Questions from the floor, please. Here we have one.
Hello, question to the last speaker. So, do you think, has the brain developed some other coping mechanisms over the centuries? Because I think the information flow has always been increased over a couple of thousand years. And do you think that in 100 years or 200 years, our brains will be different to be better prepared for cope for information overflow?
Let me put it this way. Biologists are surprised to the speed by which evolution is, for instance, changing the what do you call it? Neb.
Peak.
The beak of birds, etc., as we heard yesterday. But sort of the basic code for the brain with its protection system is about the same now as it used to be. What has happened and what's really taxing our health is the fact that we sleep less. We sleep more than an hour less now than we did 25 years ago. And about 40% of a population like this would have as one on the first 2 or 3 list of complaints when they go to their yearly checkup would be that they sleep poorly. And that's really something that hammers the brain. It hammers the brain resilience, and it hammers also the ability to extract good knowledge. If you ask a good scientist, somebody who really push human knowledge forward, all of them sleep well. They have to, because otherwise you can't do that type of thinking. You can do a lot without sleeping, but you cannot conceive of it, and sort of the concepts are hammered by constant activity.
So John, how much do you sleep?
I try to sleep 8 hours a night, but I don't always succeed. But I completely agree with you. You need a good night's sleep. You do need downtime. And I think it's a problem for us scientists nowadays, now that we've got this World Wide Web. We're continually bombarded. I don't know how the young kids deal with it.
Well, I don't know either, actually, and I'm really surprised. I mean, I have people in the lab, and I mean, you should see them. Whenever I have a meeting with them, I have to tell them that all mobile phones go on that table over in that corner of the room. I mean, it's not enough anymore to say shut them off. I have to sort of physically remove them from them, like it's a prosthesis of some sort.
Michael, do you have any invention that we could sort of switch off mobile phones when they come into a room so that we get rid of this problem?
Well, as an ex-mobile operator, I don't favor switching off the phone. And I'm very much in the favor, keep your current sleep pattern, that's okay. You just need to communicate more. And the brain stays very fresh. Yeah.
Okay, next question from the audience. We have some down here.
Question on the brain. Children are now playing more with two-dimensional screens versus three-dimensional toys. Do you think that that's going to have an impact on how our brains work, that we're not as focused on things in three-dimensional space?
That experiment has been done, actually. The recruitment tests for Navy pilots had sort of a normative curve, and then computer games started to come, and suddenly 90% of the students had AAA ratings going through that test because they had practiced so much. Whether you say instead of three-dimensional going down to two-dimensional, well, a lot of the things they do is really transferring that type of two-dimensional information into three-dimensional information. I would think they would get even better in understanding. It's much more problematic for the brain that they aren't out and about playing around and physical activity, because physical activity is good for you, and you includes the brain, and we know that part of the things that you need in order for your brain to mature in a proper way is really to have a physical activity scheme that is reasonable.
Thank you.
Next question there, yeah. We move the mic.
I have a question for Michael. How many people actually do have mobile phones in the African countries? Because if you say 50 cent is already a major investment in the airtime, how much is the cost for a mobile phone in these countries?
Okay, the biggest hurdle for getting connected into the communication world is normally the price of the handset. And in the emerging markets, you had a big pickup on a penetration level when you can buy a good phone for around $25, a basic Nokia. So I think average penetration rates in Africa between 30 to 80%. There is some over-reporting in this because in Africa, as in many other poor countries, people have multiple SIMs because they know that calling within a network is always cheaper than calling across a network. So people might walk around with 2 to 3 SIMs in their pockets with one phone and then change as per they call. So the biggest complaint we have in the African markets is a damaged SIM. That doesn't happen to us in the developed world because we never take out the SIM card. In Africa, an average rate to call on net is about 1.5 to 2 cents, which is significantly below than in most developed markets.
Why is it cheaper than in the developed countries?
I have an answer.
Go ahead, please.
If you go on a website for a carrier in the Western world, you will have 80 different options for different types of plans, which means that the market for you as a consumer is completely intransparent.
And what do you say as a telecom operator to this,
No,
or a previous telecom operator?
I think in the emerging markets we've been smarter because we had to think more. So, for example, within Millicom, we did customer segmentation. So, without telling the customers in which segment they belong in, we have 6 different customer groups because we know everything about you as a consumer. We know who you call, how often, how many SMSs you send on. And let me sort of give you an example of a customer group. Could be mothers who live in Central America whose kids have migrated to the States. So now they have a need to stay in touch with their children. So we will send them, we tag and trigger them, so when they run out of airtime, we send them offers which are related to their usage and at the good rates. And they talk more and they feel it's great value. So that's really have to be fair and transparent, understanding the customer's use and give good rates on how they use their phone.
Okay, next question.
Okay, this might be a question all 3 of you can answer. What about cell phones and activity against the brain? There's been a lot of research and study that I've seen, whether it affects your brain, etc., children's. Could you provide your point of view comments on what you've seen?
You two guys, Michael can start. Your sort of
non-scientific answer. I think, as mobile operators, we tend to work very closely with the World Health Organization. And at least at the time I retired, there was no evidence yet that the sustained usage of a mobile phone would cause any problems with the brain. But
the standing evidence right now is that the intrusion in lifestyle, the stress, etc., has a much greater impact than the potential health risk of this the radiation that you get from cell phones. They have, after some great argumentation, sort of raised awareness flag for children spending several hours on the phones recently, but it's very much debated. My own view is that the numbers that they give tells me that compared to other risks, this one is not one that is in the center of my focus.
There's a question here.
Yeah. Can we have a mic up here? The old boss, we have to let him ask the questions, right? We're used to getting questions from Mr. Sharif.
Back to the brain. What is the impact of age on the reaction of the brain? Because you gave examples amongst people who are mature, how would children have reacted to your example?
The example about the top level decision making is of course a decision making system based both on late maturation, because those are evolutionary newer areas of the brain, and they're also dependent on education, so to speak, which means that the direct reaction from kids is normally much more guided by the lower order decision-making system, and that's why it's so easy to raise kids, because they are predictable. And the thing is, in order to get the lower level and the high level to stick together, you have to the best recipe for that is that you raise them in a constant environment, an emotionally constant environment. That's really the best for the kid. You know when you're good, you know when you're bad, you know when you're happy, etc. So which means that sort of the emotional reaction set is coupled to the knowledge set that is coming later. And if you want to raise a teenager, it's good to have it finished by the age of 3.5.
What is the impact as you grow up? I still don't get it.
The impact. So do you mean
You are growing up in age, and you reach 50, 60, 70, 80. What is the effect of this age on the functioning of the brain that you described?
Well, the one obvious thing that is happening all the time, and that is that the biological clock for certain cells in the brain is going faster than for other cells. And one cell group that is quicker to sort of decline in function is what we call the librarian of the brain. The librarian is an old type librarian knows where all the books are, have sort of read scantily all of them, and know where to point. And that library function. It's situated in the inner side of the temporal lobe. That one declines quicker, which means that the acquisition of new knowledge, the acquisition of new things, and for instance, if you go to work every day and suddenly you park your car in another place, and you simply just forget it because you didn't imprint that type of new knowledge, that declines with age. Will the new information society influence this type of aging changes? No, not in itself, but the stress level, the sedentary lifestyle, and the food habits that we have actually increase the stress for this system, which means that if you really want to be nice to your brain, you should follow the last slide in order to maintain it longer, and thereby also on a population level report back higher life satisfaction, higher numbers for life satisfaction.
Okay. No, we have a question there first. The other way. Here. Stop. Here? Yes.
Question to you again. You proposed to make changes to the schooling system. Can you elaborate?
Don't get me started.
We only have a few minutes left. I mean, this is a lifetime.
But I mean, the obvious thing is that the old schooling system, the pre-industrial schooling system, and the industrial schooling system is totally different, and we have teachers who are so far behind technologically and information theory-wise that they do not meet the expectations of the children. 50 years ago, the teacher had a knowledge monopoly. If you listen to me, I'll tell you. Today, a teacher says, well, the World War II started in, and before they finish the sentence, somebody is going, no, you're wrong. Which means that this common knowledge building together is something that has to be adopted into the pedagogical schemes, and there are a number of other things. And above all, it's the falling literacy rates of boys in the Western world is really a crisis marker. Yeah. Girls are falling, but to a much lesser extent. It's the gap between boys and girls is increasing. It's always been there, but it's now increasing at alarming rates. And everybody knows that any civilization that do not educate the boys, they're in for trouble. It's been so since the Greeks.
They go and burn cars instead then.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we know that economy takes off when more than 40% of the women become literate. So that's when the economy takes off. But we also know that the society costs in terms of lack of trust, etc., increases exponentially with the number of boys that do not read.
Connie, we've got some questions over this side as well.
All right. Could we get the mic over there? I think this doesn't really work. Do we have a microphone up there?
I'm sorry.
Sure. Switch me on.
There's $1 billion business worldwide in supplements, particularly toward the brain. Where does that fit into your scheme, or is it just a bunch of bunk?
Let me put it this way. If you eat the way your mother made the food, well, you're not old enough, the way my mother made the food, you don't need any of that. If you're like the normal American today, where you eat more than half of your meals outside your home, there are certain needs that are not fulfilled and that are not good for your brain. One of them is the balance between different types of fats. The omega-3s are virtually gone from that type of food, because the omega-3s, they shorten the shelf life. Omega-6, more stable. That's when you get your shelf life. More sugars, you get more shelf life, you get more stress, and you get more. All of the metabolic problems that sort of also hurts the brain. So, in most cases, if you eat right, you're fine. But more and more people, also in the developed world, are now eating to such an extent that this may become an issue. Today, it's not.
Okay, we have a question up there.
For Professor Ellis, with so much leading-edge research, what is the current belief before the Big Bang in the community?
Well, you get as many opinions about that as you ask physicists. I personally believe that it's not a good question to ask, because
I love that.
Because we have all these laws of physics that work very well to describe the universe since the Big Bang, but those laws break down as we approach the Big Bang. So I wouldn't even know what happens at t equal to 0. I'm not even sure whether t equal to 0 exists, even less whether t less than 0 existed.
I hope that answered your question.
I love that.
Okay. That's it. No more questions. We're finalizing this session. We start with leaving it on a high, right? Thank you very much, guys. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi.